Hi, Ashley. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Welcome to Wavelengths, Wave Interviews.
Thank you.
I'll have you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can start talking.
Absolutely. So, I'm Ashley Olafsen. I'm 18 years old. I'm a student at UMass Amherst, and I create and deliver self confidence empowerment workshops. I send out a weekly newsletter, and I run a couple clubs. And I'm really, really passionate about body image and media representation and mental health stigmas and basically anything that is holding back teenagers and children from reaching their full potentials.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
So, one of the things you're doing to get your message out is you've been working on a book, and we've kind of worked on that a little bit together.
Yep.
So, maybe you could start by talking about what inspired you to write a book, and what the book is about.
Yeah, okay, really good question. So, after I started giving workshops, I started realizing that this was something that I wanted to do for a career. And so I started researching because I knew that if I wanted to do this long term, I would really need to inform myself first. So I started reading, which was the first way that I started researching. And when I started reading all these different books, I noticed that there was a gap and that there were a lot of really terrific books out there that were on body image and mental health and on the problems that teenagers are going through, but they were either super academic or they were written as parenting books. And so I noticed that there wasn't a really easy, accessible book out there for kids and teenagers, the people who really need to be hearing these kinds of messages, to read. And I also noticed that there wasn't any sort of self-help component to the books. It was mostly here's what you can do if you're a parent.
Mm.
So I decided that I wanted to fill that gap, and so I came up with my book. It is tentatively called Survival of the Prettiest, and it is basically split into three main sections. And the overarching thesis is that messages that kids and teenagers receive today are holding us back. And the first message or idea or concept that's holding us back would be gender. And I discuss all the different ways that gendered expectations hold back both males and females. And then I propose solutions as to what you can do to have better body image. How to assertively have a conversation if you're in a toxic friendship, etc. The second thing that I write about is how mental health stigmas are holding us back. And I really explain eating disorders and self harm and depression and all those things. And then we talk about different solutions. And then the third main thing that I discuss is basically how we have a very contradictory attitude towards sex, where we are unwilling to talk about legitimate sex, and instead we have lots of pornography and we have lots of sexualization, and we live in a very sex saturated culture. Yet we never openly and honestly discuss it. So I talk about all the consequences of that and how it's affecting teenagers. So that's like the overarching theme of the book. And then I think another thing that really inspired me to write the book was when I was in elementary school, I read this book called The School Story, and it was about, I believe, a 12-year-old girl who wrote her own book, and she
Mm.
got it published and everything, and she had like her best friend be her agent, and it was
Cool.
so inspiring to me as a little girl. And ever since reading that, I had always wanted to read a book. I had always wanted to write a book. So when I noticed that there was a gap, I figured, why not? Why don't I just write it? You know?
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
And what, I mean, we didn't really talk about this yet, but what originally inspired you to, start giving workshops, start
Yeah.
putting this message out there? What happened that inspired you to do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was really just frustration. Like, I obviously, like every other girl, I had body image issues. I had best friends with eating disorders and who were self-harming and going through all these awful things. And I looked around and I just noticed that, like, every single girl that I was friends with or every girl that I knew couldn't realize how incredibly beautiful she was and how much potential she had. And it was just so incredibly devastating to look around and to see such a lack of self-confidence. So I decided that I wanted to do something about it. And then I gave the first workshop with three of my best friends, and I've given 15 since and
Wow.
one summer program.
Very
Yeah.
cool. So how, like if somebody wanted to do something like what you're doing or join your group or join your movement, what would you recommend? Like, what's your advice for, because, kind of when you hear about, or when people hear about what you're doing, it's like, wow, that's amazing. How does she do it? Like, how could I do something like that? How do you know, get speaking engagements? How do you make that happen?
I would just encourage people to come talk to me because I am like at a point where I have a couple contacts. So if someone wants a speaking engagement, if someone wants to do a workshop, I am willing to work with them. I am willing to hook them up, to connect them. Like I am so all for like helping out other people and for empowering other people. So if anyone hopes to do anything similar to what I'm doing, I would just strongly encourage them to shoot me an email or to send me a message off of the website that will be in the link, and I will completely 100% work with them to make whatever they want to happen.
Awesome. Very cool. So we could kind of go back to talking about the book a little bit more.
Yeah.
Could you talk about, because writing a book is, definitely a huge process and it takes a long time. How did you set yourself up to, complete pieces of the book, each at a time? How did you schedule it out? What was your process like?
So the book has taken me 2.5 years to write and to research. And when I originally decided that I was going to write the book, I was like, oh, I'll be done in like 3 months. Like, I got this.
Yeah.
And then as I started writing, I was like, oh, this is going to be a really long process. So I originally just started writing the book, just like completely cold, like that was it. And after like I wrote a little bit, I was reading through it and I was like, this is just not very good. Like, this is not what it should be. So I decided that I wanted to start researching and looking at other books for models. So the first year that I was writing the book, I was actually just really researching it and then just jotting down a couple ideas. So I spent a year, like a full year, just reading 30-something books and watching TED Talks and documentaries. And what I would do is whenever I would read the books is I would mark the pages that I thought were important, and then I would go back and I would photocopy the pages that I thought were important, and then I would just highlight the text that I wanted to include in my own book. And then I would sort through that, and I would assign that to like different categories and different topics. And after a year of looking at studies and fact sheets and TED Talks and documentaries and so on, I began to write, and this time I began to write using the different categories for references. So I would use what I had learned to back myself up. The writing process itself took about a year, and I worked on it every single day using like extreme deadlines. Like I used so many deadlines. I had deadlines that I would give myself for every single day, and then I would give myself long-term deadlines. So I had a lot of deadlines. And then about halfway through, I actually realized that I needed to redo my entire structure because the book was structured only to for a female audience, and I realized that I needed to include a male audience as well. So that was really a hard couple of months, and I spent about 3 months just trying to figure out how in the world I was going to restructure and rewrite the book in a way that it would work for males because I was so close to being done.
Yeah.
But after like 3 months of just like trying and trying and trying, I finally came up with a new structure. So when I came up with a new structure, then I began to rewrite the entire book, taking what I had previously written plus what I had learned from all the books and etc. And I began to just sort of compile that all together and to condense it all together in this new structure. And then after putting it all together, then I worked with you, my editor, and after I had gotten professional feedback from an editor, I went back and I edited it one more time, just going through with the edits that you had given me.
Yeah. Awesome. So that takes so much dedication. How did you stay motivated? Like, did you have anybody kind of like supporting you as you were writing, or did you, what were your kind of tips or tricks to staying motivated, especially with daily deadlines and, on top of like being in school, being involved in a lot of activities, running your workshops? How did you make the time for it?
I mean, it's just like, it's what I love doing. Like, I am so incredibly passionate about body image and mental health. I knew that the message that I needed, it is so important that I get these messages out there. And so for me, it was more just something that, like, I knew, like, I almost feel like I have, like, a duty and a responsibility to get these messages out there because they're so incredibly important.
Yeah.
So even though like I really struggled in the 2, 3 months when I was like working on like when I was working on restructuring it, I was able to stay motivated because I was giving workshops.
Yeah.
And because every single time I would give a workshop, I would be reminded once again and again and again how incredibly important it was that I got the book out there. And like also people would say things to me like, I can't wait to read your book. And like
Yeah.
that would give me so much like excitement and that would make me really want to finish it because I had to. I
Awesome.
don't think like for me staying motivated wasn't an incredibly difficult thing to do just because it's what I love doing. And like I said, like I really love doing creative projects, so I had a lot of fun while doing it. Even though
Mm.
it was like a hard process, I really enjoyed the challenge that came with it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And do you feel like other people like who also are involved in the movement, are also inspired to write books now that you've written yours?
Yeah, well actually there's a girl who came to my summer program who's actually writing her own book now.
Oh wow, awesome.
So that was so inspiring. That was so nice.
Very cool. So she was inspired from the workshop to write her own book.
Yep.
Awesome.
So it's coming full circle.
Very cool. So now, like, where are you now in the process? Are you? I know we've checked in a few times, but you're kind of like working with an agent, or are you looking for
Yes.
a publisher? What's going on there?
So I finished writing and editing the entire thing like last week, which is really bizarre because it's been such a long process.
Yeah.
Um, but I reached out to a literary agent, and I am really like I'm praying that she accepts my work. She's currently looking over the manuscript.
Okay.
So if she accepts it, then I will be looking at publishing companies, and I'll be working with her to get the book published. So
Awesome.
say a prayer.
I will, and I'll ask everybody to
Thank
definitely,
you.
think of you and say a prayer for you, and
Thank you.
you know, that it goes to the perfect publisher for you,
Yeah,
the
that's
right fit for you.
yeah. Thank you so much.
So how did you go about, like I think the kind of the agent and publishing part can be a little bit daunting for people. How did you find the agent that you're working with? How did you
Yeah.
kind of go about that?
So I was just doing online research. I was just looking up literary agents, nonfiction literary agents, and I tried emailing a couple people, and the emails all bounced back,
Oh.
which is obviously a sign looking
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And none of the people that I had emailed worked out. And I finally found this agent or a literary agent who wanted to work with nonfiction authors, specifically those who were engaged in social justice. And she was looking for new writers too, which like
Awesome.
you really don't find with many literary agents, at least not where I was looking.
Okay.
So I was like, oh my gosh. And then I kept reading through her bio, and it said that she worked with one of my biggest role models. And she helped to launch one of my biggest role models' career.
Wow.
So I sent her an email, and I was just like, she probably won't respond to this, but like if she does, it's going to be amazing. So I sent her an email, and she responded to me within 48 hours.
Wow.
And so then I finished up the manuscript and I sent it over to her, and now I'm waiting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. That sounds like a perfect
Meant
fit.
to be. I
Yeah.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, that's great. Well, cool. We'll definitely include all of your links, and have everyone kind of check in with you, and definitely let
Thank
us
you.
know. Maybe we'll do another interview as your book moves along in the
Yeah.
process. Do you have anything you want to add, like any last words, or just kind of like maybe something that you're working on now, or something that's going on in the future? Anything else you want to
Yeah.
add?
I would just recommend signing up for my weekly newsletter. I send out a newsletter every single Sunday through email. And if you want to follow me and you want to follow what I'm doing, that's the perfect way to do so. So if you enjoyed hearing about this, you want to know when my book is coming out, or any updates on that, just sign up for my newsletter, and the link will be right in the bio.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley. We'll
Thank you so much.
look forward to hearing more and seeing and buying your book when it comes out.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.